Hey, Tara Strong here, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 242 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks, Optimus Solo, and joining me, as usual, is the Comic Concierge. Hello, Dan.
Hey, that means a little bit more with this episode since one of the characters was named Dan, so that was a little weird, but
Yeah.
So
There's no Kevin here, though, so it's just
no,
you, just you being represented here.
No Kevin Wade, it's just Ben. Yeah.
So as Dan mentioned, we are going to talk more Westerns today. We're entering a new block of our Western retrospective. So we have covered some of the classic John Ford films. We've covered a handful of spaghetti Westerns, and now we're moving into original versus remake, I guess you could say. So Westerns that originally aired, and then originally got filmed, and then we had a remake later on. So we have a series of those that we're going to cover, starting with today's 310 to Yuma, comparing the 1957 film and the 2007 film. And we're going to break this down by talking about each one separately, and then we will come together and kind of compare and contrast a little bit, let you guys know which ones we prefer, if we have a clear choice or not, and kind of how that goes. But before we get the facts on the 1957 Delmer Daves film, Dan, remind everybody what your experience was with both versions of 310 to Yuma going into this record.
So the original had never seen before, so it was a first time watch for me, but I had seen the remake, so a couple of times. I think it's been a while though. It's been, I think, over a decade since I last saw it, so it was like watching it for the first time, but a first time watch for the remake or for the original for me. How about yourself?
Same camp. I was first time watch for the original. I had definitely seen the 2007 version at least once, if not a couple times, but it is a completely different experience watching them back to back and having quite some time pass from the time I last saw the remake. So it's going to be an interesting conversation for sure. Before we get into that conversation, though, Dan is going to give you guys some facts about the original 1957 film, and then we'll come back and give you our thoughts on that one.
Wow, look at the time. We may be late as we enter a new block of our Western retrospective, originals versus remakes. First up, 310 to Yuma, as we look at the 1957 original, directed by Delmer Daves, starring Glenn Ford, Van Heflin, and Felicia Farr. The film is set in the Arizona Territory in the 1880s. It opens on a stagecoach going from Contention City to Bisbee. It's only a few miles from its destination, but a group of men on horseback herd cattle to block its path. After it stops and the dust clears, we see that the men are a band of thieves, some with their guns drawn. The owner of the stage line, Mr. Butterford, played by Robert Emhart, is on board, and the target of the robbery is a gold shipment on top the stage. Small-time rancher Dan Evans, played by Van Heflin, and his two younger sons are on horseback looking at their cattle that have been used for this grand plan. Dan hears the cattle over the ridge, and they ride over to where they can see the robbery in progress. The robbers spot Dan, and their leader Ben Wade tells them, just stay where you're at, and you'll get your cattle back in only a few minutes. As one of the robbers passes down the gold, the driver, Bill Moods, draws his own gun and grabs the robber as a shield. That's when Ben Wade fires twice, one killing his own man, which clears his line of sight, which allows him to kill Bill Moods. Dan's son asks him if there's anything he's going to do, and he responds, well, no, there's nothing he can do without getting himself and his kids shot. That's Ben Wade. He knows how dangerous he is, and he doesn't really want to get involved and endanger the life of himself and his family. Wade then confiscates Dan's horse so he won't ride to tell the marshal. He says he'll turn them loose this side of Bisbee, taking the 6 horses from the stagecoach as well. Wade and his men depart, and Dan and his boys go on foot to bring the cattle home. Dan agrees to return to the stagecoach with a horse as well for the man left behind. Dan returns home, and his devoted wife Alice is shocked over his lack of outrage over what happened, but as he explains, there was nothing he could do, plus he has far more to worry about as their farm is failing due to the drought. After discussing a few things, he agrees to go into town to try to borrow $200 in hopes that it could save his farm. Back in Bisbee, Wade and his men pose as cowhands, telling everyone that they witnessed the stage being robbed and its driver killed, trying to get the marshal to go out and investigate. Eventually, Wade tells his men to scatter into the countryside, but he stays behind to enjoy the company of a pretty barmaid. After picking up Butterfield, Dan runs into the marshal and is able to explain what actually happened. Back in town, he approaches Wade in the saloon and asks about being paid for what occurred that day. His time was wasted. But in reality, it was really a distraction so they can capture Wade. And now the question is, what do they do next? Dan sees that opportunity to earn that much needed money by joining the posse tasked with escorting Wade to the town of Contention, where he will board the 310 to Yuma train in order to go to prison. The journey, of course, is tense, but the real drama unfolds once Dan and a group arrive in Contention and take Wade to a hotel to wait for the train's arrival. Inside that cramped room, the film becomes this psychological standoff. Wade, calm and manipulative, tries to undermine Dan by appealing to his frustration, his lack of respect from his family, and his financial struggles, and the apparent futility of doing the right thing. Making things even worse is that one by one, the men guarding Wade begin to lose their nerve and abandon the mission, especially as Wade's gang begins to gather outside the town, egging on the impending violence. Dan is increasingly isolated, forced to confront both Wade's influence and his own self-doubt. As the clock ticks closer to 3:10, Dan remains determined, motivated by a need to prove his worth and uphold his sense of honor. In the final stretch, he must escort Wade through the dangerous streets to the train while Wade's gang closes in. The climax hinges not just upon physical courage, but moral resolve, as Wade makes an unexpected choice. He indicates he's willing to jump onto the train under his own free will, allowing Dan to complete the mission. Ben Wade's final decision has been debated for decades. Does he act upon respect, boredom, manipulation, or something like redemption? The film never spells it out, which is part of why it sticks with so many people. The film comes from a short story by Elmore Leonard, better known for later crime novels like Get Shorty. This was one of his earliest works, and you can already see his trademark with focus on dialogue and morally complex characters. Glenn Ford was often cast as a straightforward hero, but here he plays Ben Wade as a charismatic, intelligent, and quietly menacing. The movie wasn't huge or didn't have a flashy production, but it earned strong reviews and later became regarded as one of the most psychological rich westerns of its era. It's often cited as a bridge between the traditional westerns and more morally ambiguous ones that come much later, like the ones we discussed during our spaghetti western part of this retrospective. It was shot very quickly on a modest budget. Director Delmer Daves was known for efficiency, and this film was made fast and really cheap. That was part of why so much of it takes place in a single hotel room. At the time of its release, it was heavily praised by critics that loved its intelligence and restraint. General audiences appreciated it, but it was not a huge mainstream hit, mostly due to its slower pace and lack of action. Although it had a big impact outside of the US, as it caused Yuma to enter into the lexicon of the Cuban slang as a term for American visitors. But where do Kevin and I stand? Back to us to discuss.
All right, so now Dan and I have both seen the 1957 film for the first time. Dan, I'm very interested to see how this conversation is going to go in multiple ways, but what was your reaction to the original 310 to Yuma?
So it's interesting because, like you said, like it's weird going in to watch a movie you've never seen before, but you kind of have because you saw the remake of it, so you kind of have an idea of what to expect. But in some ways, this really wasn't what I was expecting because in my head, the remake, which we'll get to, is very like different in its execution. But I was actually really impressed with this. Looking at like all the movies we've done thus far, like the first time watches for me, so not counting, Once Upon a Time in the West, which is one I've seen before. This is up there as one of my favorites we've watched in a lot of ways. I think just because it was so unexpected. I love the approach. It is very different than what we've seen. It if anything reminds me the most of maybe the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, because it's very much more of a dialogue driven film compared to like an action driven. Although it is very tense and very thrilling at times, but it's done again mostly through dialogue until maybe the very end. But I just found the dynamics quite interesting. I also just even some of the roles that certain characters play. I mean, we'll probably get to this later when we contrast the film, but I think if you were to kind of just not get someone who's never seen both and just lay out the plot lines and certainly the way decisions that certain characters make, especially near the end, I think you would think the plot line of this would actually be the more modern plot line in some ways with the way it plays out, but that is not actually the case. And I know it's not part of our retrospective, and maybe if we continue it, it will be, but it definitely reminded me a lot of High Noon in the sense of it's a lot about trying to find those individuals that have that moral courage to do what's right and like weighing the doing what's right with your own self preservation and like is it actually worth it, because like at the end of the day, is it worth it just to protect this bank at the end? Does it make sense? And so I just thought it asked a lot of really intriguing questions compared to a lot of what we got before. Like I said, I think the only thing that's come close so far is Liberty Valance, and I thought the performances, especially Ben Heflin and Glenn Ford, two actors I don't know, like I've seen much of for. Like I don't, their faces are familiar.
I think you have, but you don't realize you have.
Yeah, like their faces are familiar, but I can't really place them very well.
So Glenn Ford you might recognize because he plays Jonathan Kent in the first Superman film.
Oh, okay. There you go. So I do know him.
And then Van Heflin appeared in. He was one of the. I think he was a starring role in Shane, which I don't think I've seen Shane, but he also appears in 1970s Airport film.
Which I have not seen.
I know less about him, and I wouldn't have definitely recognized either one of them. I thought this was definitely the first film I saw either one of these folks in, but I have seen the original Superman, so I guess I'm like, I didn't remember that was him though.
Yeah, but I thought they were both great. Their dynamic worked really well. So I was quite impressed with this one. But how about yourself?
I'm curious what I want to put you on the spot because you kind of know some of my movie tastes and some things that I like in movies or not. Do you think I'm going to be positive or negative on this one?
Well, I'm trying to think. I feel like it is very play-like, and I know you have histories with plays.
Mm-hmm.
I thought was you would like it, but because I feel like everything's pretty clear cut. Like I don't feel like there's anything that is. I know with some of the issues we had with the a few dollars more, like some of the motivations weren't quite there. I feel like everything here makes sense on like a script level. So I don't know. I think you liked it. Am I right? Am I wrong?
You are correct.
Yeah.
I think it has a couple different things going for it. It's not always a limited setting, but there is a great deal of this original movie that takes place in basically a hotel.
Yeah.
And even past that, we don't get these like far expansive like sets and like different things. I mean, there is some outdoor things that happen and whatnot, but I'm always a fan of limited settings and I'm always a fan of limited casts. And I feel like you get that both here. And then I'm pretty typically, I think it like speaks to the types of movies I like when it's something that's dialogue heavy.
Yeah.
And when the dialogue becomes super important. And then I just really like when a small group of people, whether it be 2, 3, 4, or something like that, everything else is kind of taken away, and you really get to like just spend time with the psychology of those people and the human element and kind of decision making, motivations, how people feel about themselves, their ideas of different things about, just like I said, the human condition or their role in the world and things like that. So I think this gives us all of that, right? Like we get a big time look at especially Ben and Dan as they're spending quite a bit of time, isolated. Maybe a few characters come and go throughout the time, but they're really kind of like they're both spending a decent amount of time trying to analyze and figure the other person out and kind of dissect what their motivations are and to see like obviously Ben Wade is trying to manipulate Dan in a lot of this. But I think Dan's also like at the same time trying to understand Ben in some ways, like how much rope can he give him? You know, is he swayed by some of his overtures? Can he trust taking his eyes off of him? Like
Mhm.
there's like a lot of that type of stuff going on where they're trying to kind of figure each other out. And I think that is something that for some reason I just really gravitate towards, and kind of just like looking at the human psychology of it. So I really appreciated that. I did think that I was hoping for like Dan, like the entire movie, which I get this is the point, but like the entire movie, I wanted him to stop sweating once. I was like, I just want him to get his bearings, stop being nervous for 1 second, stop sweating for a second. I want to see like who he is without all of this. Like he was on like, if no matter what happened in this movie, I felt like he was only a couple years away from a heart attack. Like he is just like high strung to an nth degree. And I was just like, man, this guy is like, it had to be draining on this guy to play this part. I feel like at the end of the day, he like needed to just like sit in a hot tub and like unwind because he was on 10 for sure. But yeah, I just really enjoyed a lot of the elements that are like going into it. And I feel like I've never seen a Delmer Daves movie. I've never even heard
Yeah.
that name before today or before we went to go watch this, but I feel like whatever his background is or his future after this, like for this specific pocket in time, like when he was doing this movie, I felt like he was executing things in a very surgical manner. Like I feel like he just very much had a handle of what story he wanted to tell and how he wanted to tell it. And I think he like from a step by step execution, like I'm not gonna say necessarily like flawless, but it felt pretty darn well constructed.
Well, we have seen one Delmore Daves film.
Which one did
We
he do?
He did An Affair to Remember.
Oh, okay.
So, which I completely forgot. But
All
yeah,
right.
that's his best known film. But yeah,
Gotcha.
so that's odd, an odd connection with our retrospective. So yeah,
We
like
love to do that.
yeah. So seeing, I don't see a lot of connecting tissue with this and 310 to Yuma per se. But maybe if you dug deep enough, you would be able to find something. But yeah, that's probably his best known film is An Affair to Remember. But outside of that, like I have not seen much else beyond that.
Had you
So,
heard the song before you watched the film?
hey, no, I didn't, and I
But I
was like,
feel like I have. Like I know I
yeah,
haven't, but I felt like, oh yeah, that's some song I probably heard like 100 times growing up. I don't know. Like,
I don't know. I'm actually like, why didn't they use it in the remake? I guess it doesn't
oh my
really.
god, yes, why they didn't use that drove me nuts.
Even I guess maybe it doesn't. It's not as it doesn't.
But
It's very
still,
dated.
like
Even at the
it's
end,
like
there's I don't know. Yeah.
there was time where you could have done it, and I feel like it would have been maybe they were trying to be less like Tarantino, but I feel like if Tarantino makes the remake, like that song is 100% going to be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And like it's an interesting story. The guy that did that, like sang a bunch of like different theme songs for different movies and TV shows. So he sang the theme song for 310 to Yuma. This guy's name is Frankie Lane. He sang the song in Blazing Saddles. And there was like a couple other that he did. I'm trying to remember. I had looked it up beforehand, but not just like movies, but like TV shows as well, where he basically was known for doing this type of thing in like Western TV shows and movies. So like it's kind of a little crazy um bit like I would like to see like a little biography of him. Blazing Saddles, 310 to Yuma, Gunfight at the OK Corral. And then also Raging Bull, he sang a song in Raging Bull.
Hmm. Huh?
So like go Frankie Lane.
Yeah. That is intriguing for sure. You know what? One of the things that really surprised me with this, obviously, is that with and what the remake, it's very much, and we'll talk about it more. Is it's a father son story in a lot of ways, where this is more so a husband and wife story, really.
Mhm.
Because, and I was a bit surprised by that, but you certainly see the role, and that's what I was talking about when I mentioned like if you were to give these two plot lines, like the plot that um Leora Dana, Miss Alice Evans, like Dan Evans' wife plays, like you would think, oh, that's the more updated version because they have the female, the wife, being more active. She comes in and helps almost like save the day at the end, but that's actually this, and I think if it's I think the most bucking the trend of the the female role we've seen thus far in a lot of the westerns, maybe since Once Upon a Time in the West, where she's the one that kind of her relationship with Dan's interesting because it's not she's not necessarily she's a little disappointed in him, but it's more so like she believes in him, and she's just trying to get him to believe in himself. And I just found their dynamic like intriguing, and like it ends up being a bit like heartwarming, of course, at the end, where like you see like her fulfillment in him come true at the end. Like I thought their dynamic, like I did not expect that piece at the end. Like she plays a much bigger part within this than I was expecting. I was curious to see what you thought about her role.
Yeah, it was interesting too because it was like I feel like there was elements of it that were also stereotypical of how people communicated in the time period that it's depicting, and I feel like I feel like at that time, like a lot of people keep things close to their vest and they don't say what they really are thinking.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's times where she's saying something that's not exactly 100% what she's thinking, but the way he takes it, it's
Yeah.
like if you would have just been more open with what you were feeling or thinking, he definitely wouldn't have taken it how he took that. Like, so I feel like there's always that like weird dynamic when you see some of these like especially in husband-wife relationships from older time periods with how they interact, how they communicate and things like that. It's just it seems definitely like almost foreign to us, I feel like these days. But it reminds me of like how my parents and my aunts and uncles communicate almost too. Right? Like it's just something of like some older generations where they just aren't as open and like honest with each other. I feel like at times, I don't know. But like I really appreciated her role in this. I question her actions of going to contention. Like that maybe not the smartest decision in the world, but no, I thought it was interesting how they did that, and it seemed like it was ahead of its time to like kind of explore that and give her such a focal point. But I definitely appreciated it uh, in a way that we'll probably talk more about how it works, I guess, from the father son aspect in the later one. But I appreciated how this dynamic kind of added to the movie, but didn't 100% take over the movie.
Yeah, I think it really like it fed into like Dan Evans's kind of self realization of like who he is, because like
Yeah, it's like very complimentary of what else we were looking at in a way.
because it's in regarding this, obviously, like the plot line here is pretty straightforward in the sense of they start within we have a robbery. They have this idea of like trying to pull a fast one, and Ben Wade stays back behind it, to swoo the barmaid. And did you get the impression within their conversation that like they had a history, or was it just like an instant connection?
It sure seemed like it. I'm like, this is a weird instant. Like, if there's no history, like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to call her any names,
Yeah,
or whatever. But like, I'm like, if there's not a history somehow, like, you were just instantaneously taken aback by this guy. And yes, he's charismatic. Glenn Ford is, and I can see some of it, but it seemed almost implausible how fast she becomes somewhat taken by him.
yeah. I got the impression that there must have been like because the way like the questions, the way he was like hinting at like their like a past connection. So that was my impression as well in some ways, but I wasn't fully sure, or maybe it was just a lot of this is ambiguous. So I don't know if that was kind of the impression you got there.
Yeah, I got an impression that they had some sort of history, but like it definitely was like the definition of ambiguous. Like it
Yeah.
was definitely something you kind of had to read into it. But I like to think that because otherwise, I'm like, she just it was very easily taken.
I mean,
I'm curious too. Like, obviously, we get a yes. There's a limited cast when it comes to like some of the main dialogue sequences, and especially in the hotel and things like that. But along the way, we do get a decent amount of supporting characters, right? Like we
yeah,
have Charlie Prince, who's like Ben Wade's second deputy or in command, like his number two, so to speak. And then we we have, Mr. Butterfield, who is the guy that was in charge of the stagecoach that's getting robbed, that's trying to like orchestrate all of this. We have, a marshal. We have a variety of different people that are both on Ben Wade's side and also trying to help arrest or apprehend Ben Wade. How do you feel this movie handled the supporting characters, and did any stand out to you as far as like memorable or really well executed?
Do you think Richard Jekyll as
Hmm.
Charlie Prince was certainly a standout because that was a role that like it could have been nothing. It could have been like we've seen a lot of the town drunk roles like that are played for a lot of laughs, a lot of just like they're just there to you know just be kind of cannon fodder in a way. But if anything, he had a lot of development within himself to try to like again. You see him wanting to prove himself, saying that like he can he can do this, he can be the person, he can be relied upon, and but also like his fate like I didn't this can got dark at times like seeing like what happened to him and then how that fuels Dan in a way. So I certainly thought like what happens to his character overall was certainly a standout. And Mr. Butterfield I think is interesting too because he's not just the evil banker. Like we've seen that. Like we've seen like the evil banker a lot, just within the with Once Upon a Time in the West, where like, he's willing to at least like do something. Like he is going on the mission too. He's putting himself out there a bit more so than most. But at the same time, he's also like risking everyone's life just for doesn't really need to. So he. I think he was an intriguing figure as well. So I do think like like you said, they pared down the cast so you really got a good sense of everyone and ultimately this is obviously Ben Wade versus Dan Evans, but
Hmm.
the other people I feel like got their due, and like even some of those side characters like Charlie had a good good development. The only ones I think that kind of are just there are mostly Ben Wade's gang, where they're kind of there's no one that really stands out. They're just kind of
Yeah.
just evil henchmen that are just nothing really to
Felt like they
them.
could have done more a little bit with the one individual that was like the sharpshooter.
Yeah,
Like I felt like they could have done maybe like he seemed like he could have been interesting, but they just really didn't have time in this film to explore that. But yeah, you're right. It's really just Ben Wade and Charlie Prince, and everybody else is just like the stormtroopers, or so to
yeah.
speak.
I think that's part of it too, because they also want you to not know, like, so you're not sure who's on his side or not. Like when they walk
Yeah.
into the hotel and that guy's sleeping, it's like, is he part of the gang? Is he not? You don't really know. So I do think that's perhaps a purposeful choice. And
Yeah.
we do see how that differs when we get to the next film in the sense of where they give us a bit more defined characters when it comes to like Ben Wake's his gang and the characters within it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything else on the original, or should we switch over to the remake and talk
I,
about that for a little bit?
maybe just I guess we can talk about the finale when we contrast them. But yeah,
Okay.
let's just let's go over to the remake, and because I feel like everything else we can get into when we talk about the differences and the similarities.
We are on the road again as we're looking at the 2007 version, 310 to Yuma, directed by James Mangold, starring Christian Bale and Russell Crowe, and much of the original framework is here with some new layers and perhaps a different conflict. Here, Dan Evans is a wounded Civil War veteran whose failing ranch and financial troubles have left him desperate and quietly ashamed in front of his family, especially his eldest son, who sees him as a weak failure. When the infamous outlaw Ben Wade is captured after a daring stagecoach robbery, Evans joins a small group of men tasked with escorting Wade across that dangerous territory into contention where he must catch the 310 to Yuma train in order to get him to prison. Evans is motivated not just by the reward money, but by the need to prove his courage and integrity, especially to his older son. The journey becomes increasingly perilous as Wade's ruthless gang, led by the volatile Charles Prince, who's played by Ben Foster, hunts them down. Along the way, the group is slowly whittled down through ambushes and betrayals, hiding the sense that the danger is always there and there's no turning back, and they simply cannot win the day. Meanwhile, Wade, intelligent, observant, and perceptive, begins to probe Evans, his insecurities, testing his resolve, while also developing a strange respect for his determination to reject all that and keep going. Their conversations reveal contrasting worldviews and how they see the world. Wade lives by a flexible personal code shaped by survival and self interest, while Evans clings to a rigid sense of duty and honor despite his failures. When they finally reach contention, the situation erupts into chaos. Wade's gang descends upon the town, turning it into a war zone as Evan struggles to get his prisoner to the train on time in a brutal and desperate push through gunfire and collapsing alliances. Evans does get some help from some unexpected sources. First, his son, who has become enamored with his father's newfound courage. In a poetic move, he lets loose some cattle so his father can use them as cover to get to the train. Wade also decides to go along willingly, and Evans is able to get him to the train, but dies in the process. In a surprise turn, Wade, perhaps moved by Evans' unwavering commitment, chooses not to escape immediately, honoring his sacrifice in a quiet, ambiguous act of respect. The film closes on the moral, layered note, suggesting that even an honored outlaw can recognize the true courage when he sees it. Russell Crowe and Christian Bale were very committed in building their chemistry as actors, and off-camera spent a lot of time together talking about their characters and their psychology. During filming, Crowe would lean into a lot of improvisation, and he would sometimes change the line, add in subtle gestures mid-scene to keep Bale reacting in the moment. The production also prioritized practical effects and real locations over CGI. Much of the film was shot in areas of New Mexico where the cast had to deal with intense heat, dust, and unpredictable weather conditions. It was a bit of a passion project for James Mangold, who was trying to get this made for years. Often passion projects don't work, but it was well received overall, especially compared to most modern westerns, with an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. Box office wise, it was successful, but not a huge hit, making $70 million worldwide, which is respectable for most westerns of that era. Although not a massive hit, especially considering the star power of Christian Bale and Russell Crowe. Over time, the film's reputation has only improved. It's often cited as one of the best westerns of the 2000s and part of a small wave that helped revive the interest in the genre. But where do Kevin and I stand? Back once again to us to discuss.
So I started with my thoughts with the originals. Why don't you start with your thoughts with the remake? I think you mentioned previously enjoying it when you first saw it. Now, years later, and also with the context of the original, what were your thoughts seeing it this time?
So it's interesting because I definitely remember being very positive, I think, on all of these remakes that we're about to cover in our series. So both 310 to Yuma, True Grit, and Magnificent Seven. I think I was, different levels of positive on all of them originally. And I think maybe because it was speaking to that Western genre that I said, like, I have a soft spot for, but I hadn't really just discovered
Mhm.
much or watched much in the form of movies. And that there was, I think, I felt like there was a while that we just didn't get too many Western films from like a modern standpoint, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it went from Unforgiven. I don't know what year that came out, but
In
like
the
I
90s.
feel,
Yeah.
yeah, like in the 90s, and I feel like it was almost until right around this time period where all of a sudden we got like a spattering of like a few more, right? Like I think this came out along the same line time of like the the Jesse James Robert Ford Coward Robert Ford film. I think it was right around 2007 maybe as well.
It was like
And
2008. Yeah.
yeah, so there was like a few that come out this time period, and then I felt like we started getting at least one or two every year. It seemed like in the late 2000s, early 2010s, or something like that. So I feel like maybe for a good 10 years, it seemed like we didn't really have much for Western. So I think I was ready for this. It was like something that when it came out, I was like, all right, yeah, I'm definitely down for some like modern
Hmm.
Westerns. And it didn't at the time trigger me to go watch the original for whatever reason. Um, I don't know exactly why that was, but I'm glad like we finally got the chance to do that. So I definitely remember being fairly positive on this one. I think even like maybe like in my top 10, top 20 of that year, if I was to do a list like at the time. Watching it this time was a strange experience, and I don't know if it's because it came like we watched them back to back, basically. Like at least I don't know what did you watch them in order? You watched the original first and then you rewatched this one?
Yeah, I watched the original. Yeah, like it was. Had like a day or so in between.
Right.
But yeah.
So same. So I definitely watched the original and waited a day or two and then watched the 2007 version. And I don't know if that necessarily did the 2007 version any favors for me. Um, I I appreciate some of it. Like it was well received at the time. Like
Yeah.
I think it has 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like most of the reviews that came out in 2007 about it were positive, like overall, and they praised a lot of stuff. And I get Christian Bale and um, Russell Crowe are pretty accomplished and well regarded actors, and I don't know if there was any issues with them necessarily, but something about this film, I I don't want to make it come across overly negative. Like I still think there's a lot that you can enjoy from this film, but watching it right after the original, I had more issues than I remember having back in 2007.
Interesting.
And we can get into what some of that is in a little bit, but I'm interested first on like as you rewatch this one after the original, were you still as positive as the first time, or what was your take this time around?
It is very. It was like watching the original, and kind of like I said, it was like a really strong reaction to it. And going back to this, I wouldn't say it's like the dumbed down version. I feel like that's too strong, but you certainly see how it was made for a more modern audience, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, like how little far we've fallen in a lot of ways. But I also kind of get it because, like I mentioned, this newer version. It is far more action based. Like this first film could be a play. This could not be. This is more high energy. They added a bunch to it. A lot of the framework is very similar. Like, the general plot line is very similar, but I think a lot is telling from like the opening scene, where the opening scene is like the people they owe a debt to are like burning down the barn,
Right.
and it just seems like everything is like turned up to 11 a little bit.
Yes.
If in ways that I don't think are necessary, because you also think like, I don't know if that's needed, because first off, if like someone owes you money and you want them to pay you back, I don't know if like burning down their method of payment, like, and how they would do that, would be the best way of getting that accomplished. It just seems like
Right.
not the most logical choice. But overall, though, I do think a lot of what works for the first still is here. Like, the core is strong. Like Russell Crowe and Christian Bale, again, great actors. And this is, I think, when they're still very much in their prime. Not that they're not still doing occasional good work here and there. Although I feel like I haven't seen Christian Bale in something in a while. But and I do like some of the changes that they made, or like some of the additions, I should say. Like, I do like the fact that like Ben Wade's gang, the characters are stronger. I like the addition of Ben Foster's character. I think he adds a lot to this. Like, he is like a different side to Ben Wade. I love some of the additions they add to Ben Wade's character, like with Russell Crowe, like his like how he is a bit of an artist. He has more of uh, uh like a religious angle. Like he quotes scripture, and so I think they didn't just settle and just try to do the same thing. So if you're gonna remake something, I do think it makes sense to like at least, like, how do you approach it? And so I thought they did try to make some adjustments. And like we mentioned, one of the biggest differences here, where the original, much of it is that uh, husband wife story. Here it's really a father son story, like a son kind of being disappointed in his father, and his father trying to prove himself. And I don't think it's as strong, because I just feel like in a lot of ways you feel like the kid is being unreasonable, because but I do like, at least like that journey, and like where it ends up. So I think, I get some of the decisions they made, because of course at this time, like a Western is a hard sell. So I think they had to do a lot of things, like, how do we get people interested? I think they had to do a little, like, they had to, let's add in some explosions. Let's make a stagecoach that is basically a tank. All these little things that would, the casting, I think, generally is pretty strong. But I think I think ultimately a lot of their additions are a bit unnecessary in some ways, and I do think, like I said, just some choices logically aren't as strong, and and the ending too. I it makes me wonder. Like, I don't know if they needed to go the route they did. I get it, but I felt like I don't know if it makes for a better film. But generally enjoyed it. But like you, it wasn't as strong as I remembered it when I first watched it. But like, when I first watched it, didn't have much experience with westerns.
Right.
Um, and I think with the knowledge of understanding of that, a lot of its strength, it's borrowing from the original. Uh, I, I don't know if that impacted me in some way. I still think it's a successful film. I still think there's a lot to take out of it, but I do think it's not nearly as strong as the original. Just to I guess spoil that piece, but I think that's pretty obvious in our conversation.
Yeah.
So
For sure. No, I think you hit on a lot of the things for me. Like, I think it does keep a lot of elements from the first one, and I think that's possibly where it's. I don't know. I don't want to say that's possibly where it's at its strongest because it does it in such a different way. I think in some cases that it's like it's the same movie, but then so different at the same time. Like
yeah.
it's an interesting thing. Like obviously we have a little bit more of an expansive setting, right? Like we're not spending nearly as much time in the hotel. We are spending a lot more time on the kind of the chase, right? Like
Hmm.
the chase and the journey are way more focal in this one compared to the original one. We definitely ramp up the not just the action, but the violence,
Hmm.
like specifically. Like it's not just that there's more action and more explosions and things like that, but there's definitely like more deaths and more graphic violence in this one than there is in the original one, which I get is a product of its time, right? It's not going to have as much, although we have seen in our westerns some violence, right? Like we have seen some torture for
Yeah.
different films. We've seen some people's hands get messed up and things like that, but like people's ears getting cut off and fed to them. So we have seen that type of thing, I guess, but we definitely don't get a lot of that from the 1957 version, and you definitely get like the more action and more violence in this one. And then they obviously expand the cast, right? Like it's not just the Ben Wade posse and the gang that we get more of. We definitely get a larger group of people surrounding Dan Evans.
Hmm.
Like it's not nearly as limited as the 1957
Yeah.
version where it's just a few folks that were. I mean, there's others that we see in different times, but like the main journey is a much more limited group of folks. And this one we get quite a few people involved, right? Like we'd still
Hmm.
get the Butterfield character, but then we get Alan Tudyk as a doctor. We get Peter Fonda as like an elderly bounty hunter involved. We get Kevin Durand, who's kind of like a sadistic ranch hand and things like that. So we get all these other different people. We eventually get like a whole nother group of people that we encounter that we didn't the first time around with Luke Wilson and his gang
Oh yeah.
or his
Yeah.
his trio
Yeah.
of people that are they have a small role, but like that's definitely like a new added element. So, and like you said, like obviously the biggest change is the Logan Lerman character as far as Dan's eldest son William,
Hmm.
and kind of the part that he plays as he gets much more involved than the son does, or than the children do in the original one. The children still exist in the original one, but it's obviously it's more about a few comments they make in the original one, whereas here we get a much more expansive like depth of their relationship and kind of back and forth. So
Hmm.
I think there's parts that I can appreciate with that, but at the same time, I couldn't help but think like we're making the same film where we are trying to modernize it. So I get you're trying to make it appeal for a newer audience and you're trying to like make a Western successful, which hasn't been done in a while and things of that nature. So I guess I get what you're going for and why you're doing some of the things, but it's like it's that thing that you're always like, Hollywood, like do we have to add more explosions? Do we have to add like all of that type of stuff? I still think you get a good film, and I think this is one that you can recommend to folks that like westerns.
Hmm.
I don't know if I would recommend this to somebody watch them back to back. Like
Yeah.
watch this one, enjoy it, maybe later on down the road watch the other one or vice versa. Like, let there be some time that passes. Don't watch them back to back, because unless, I don't know, like for me, it definitely diminished the 2007 one.
Yeah, I would say like the 2007 one is one I'd recommend. Like I said, like to general audiences, to those that maybe don't typically like westerns. I
Right.
think this one's people are going to probably enjoy more. It's easier, especially because you're going to see actors you know. Um, I do think, like you meant, like One Piece is. I do think the side characters aren't as strong. The journeys aren't as fulfilling. Like Alan Tudyk is probably who I love as an actor,
Mhm.
but like he's the you do get that great moment where it's like he's the doctor and he's working on him and he looks around and he sees that he's actually a veterinarian and that
Mm.
that piece. And you get Peter Fonda, who's a great iconic actor, but I don't think like his character has much. He's just kind of just there. I think more
Mhm.
so because he's Peter Fonda. um but yeah, it is a bit more bloated. Like you meant, like I forgot completely, honestly, about those sequence with Luke Wilson and when they're in the train sequence. Like I don't know, like you can kind of remove that sequence in a lot of ways, and I guess you could say that's where uh, you know he saves him, so he owes him a favor, and it adds to the relationship a bit. But there, I think you could kind of remove it. It becomes even a bit of a tighter film in some ways, but. Uh, what I did like, though, I do think like one of my favorite, like I mentioned, I do like I like Ben Foster as an actor. Like
Yeah.
I actually feel like I don't know. I remember like being a huge fan of him because he showed up on a lot of stuff around this time. He was in the Terminator, not the Terminator, the Thomas Jane Punisher movie.
Mhm.
He's in a bunch of
X-Men.
yeah, and the Messengers. I love he was like around this time he's in Hell and High Water. So, but so I was great seeing him again, and he does play like menacing really well. Like
Yes.
he in a way he's one dimensional, but I think that actually works because it makes Ben Wade even more intriguing because Ben Wade's a bit more complex, and then kind of see how that plays out. And in my head too, like in my head, I had this thought that like by the end of it, actually, that Ben Foster's character was actually trying to kill Russell Crowe's character for some reason. But that
Mm.
obviously wasn't the case. I don't know why I thought that, but that obviously didn't happen. So, but I did think that like he did bring something to it, and also I do think you do lose a lot when you have Gretchen Mol, who plays Alice Evans, who clearly played a huge role in the last film, but here she doesn't really. She kind of gets a couple scenes, but doesn't have much else to do. But you also one thing we see in this that we don't really see in the other film. We see Ben Wade kill a guy in the first film, like it's his first big act. He shoots somebody, but at the same time, he's also that person has a gun on someone else. Here, like he kills someone in cold blood with a knife. Like it's pretty like so. Like I feel like in a way, there's this idea like how bad is Ben Wade? Like I think I don't know. I wonder if like does that at all change? Does that answer that question, or is that just part of the progress of his character by the end?
Yeah, that's kind of getting into, I guess, in a way, this gets into like comparing those a little bit
Yeah.
more like directly, but like I feel like I appreciated more that the Glenn Ford version is a little has a little bit more gray,
Hmm.
right? Like he's bad, but he's not the same type of bad as Russell Crowe. Like
Yeah.
so I feel like there was ways that you could see the Dan Evans character in the original one starting to consider Ben Wade's overtures,
Hmm.
right? Like he's just a down on his luck, desperate, rancher or whatever you want to call him that is looking for a way out. And you can see that like the more time he spends with him, like it helps blur that line of conscience, right? Like what do I have to sacrifice about my conscience to take this guy's offer and take a whole bunch of money and like be good with my family?
Yeah.
right? And I think that works more when Ben Wade's character is a little bit more ambiguous. Like we know he's bad, but then in this specific sequence, we're not seeing him outright like slaughter somebody in front of you. Where
Yeah.
when Russell Crowe is doing that, I feel like it takes that away from Christian Bale, and you're never gonna have a thing where you're thinking like, how is this dynamic working to a point where Christian Bale could actually help him in a way, or could take the bait, or could do that? Like that's out the window in the 2007 version because Russell Crowe is just outright like violent, like
Yeah.
violent and bad. There's no gray area, and I'm not saying that you ever think that Ben Wade in the original is good, but it's a little more underspoken. Like
Yeah.
it's a little more subtle, and I feel like that added a lot to the dynamic between the two characters. Where I wish we would have got that because I think Christian Bale and Russell Crowe were definitely capable of doing that same thing in a way. But then I don't know. Like I also get that they're trying to be more violent. I get that like they're trying to not 100% mimic the entire original movie, but
Yeah.
I feel like that dynamic between those two is definitely very drastically different between the two films.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think in some ways, because like I get what you're saying, but I think in a way, I wonder if like as a character, it's more like he carpentable. Uh, wow, I can't say that word, but he almost like shuts his brain off for certain parts of it. Because like I
Yeah.
mentioned, he has this more of a religious angle that he takes. He has this introspective way of looking at life. He's a drawer. He loves drawing nature and people.
Hmm.
But it's almost like when he gets into a certain state, like he doesn't. He's a different person in
Yeah.
some ways. So yeah, I don't know. I
I think
didn't
that
make.
works. That can work, and it adds depth to the character. But I think it's hard. Like it's almost better if we see that side of him outside of Dan Evans' view.
Yeah.
Like I almost wish, like yes, we saw him do some of those things. Like show us him doing that before they come into contact with each other, which explains why the posse's after or why they're trying to arrest him, and then have Dan Evans come in, kind of not witnessing that firsthand
Hmm.
outside of maybe like the robbery or something like that. And then I think it adds more because like we know how bad he is, but then we can see like him manipulating or trying to work that relationship between himself and Dan. But like when you wake up and you see someone stabbing somebody like 100 times in front of you, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like, that's out
Yeah.
the window. I don't feel anything for you anymore.
Yeah. That's a valid point. Which I think also when we get to the point where, which is why when we get to the point and he does make that turn and you see him kind of pleading with Ben regarding like him having to go through this, and Ben eventually like kind of succumbs to his plea, and almost basically is like goes on willingly. I don't feel like his turn is as convincing this time
No,
around
it
because
definitely wasn't.
I feel like obviously like he has elements of morals in a sense, and that you could see like why he has sympathy for Dan in some ways, but it, I I don't know if it was a bit of a leap. I don't know. It wasn't as, I think, because it was so much more he's so much more time to think about it compared to the original, obviously, where it's this almost kind of gut instinct where it's literally just a few seconds there, the train's going, they're in the smoke. It's like maybe he's doing it just for fun. Like there's more, there's more questions behind it. It's more in the moment, where with that moment it's not so much because he's in control. There's no immediate threat. Like he
Mhm.
has all really technically all the time in the world. So it's just like him having the sympathy to make that decision. So yeah, I think it you can make the logic, you can put the logic together to understand it, but I just think it's not as strong of a choice compared to
Yeah.
where we get to.
Yeah, I think that leads like, obviously the ending specifically that we're talking about here is to me like one of the biggest differences between the two films that I didn't like in the
Yeah.
2007 one. Like the ending just does not land at all for me in the 2007 version compared to 1957. So obviously, spoiler alert, I guess, but like in talking about the ending one, like I find the original one, much more haunting, I guess, or morally ambiguous. Like there's an uncertainty and kind of an emotional unease that you have where the film doesn't try to over explain motivations. It doesn't try to give you like this emotional payoff or redemption or any sort of like significant thing, which I get a lot of viewers want the emotional payoff. They want the redemption. They want the, that mythic significance thing. But for me, the original leaves you with something that is different. Like it's a quiet question about whether morality matters in a world like this where that rarely rewards it. And to me, like that's much more of like a thing that's going to linger with you longer than just whatever satisfying ending you want to have because this, that, and the other. And I just thought like between their choices of who dies in the 2007 one and kind of how that all takes place, and then obviously you have the son involved. You have it, where he calls the horse in the 2007 one to run aside the train, I guess, for as long as it's gonna go. Like, yes, we get the mention in the original one that like, just letting you know, Dan, I've broken out of this prison twice already.
Yeah.
Like, you get that, and so you're left with like, okay, that's probably one of the reasons why he's willing to go, and we can draw our own conclusions. But like, it's like anything in modern audiences, right? Like, we can't leave it ambiguous. We gotta whistle for the horse and have the horse chase the train. Like, do we
Yeah.
really? Do we really have to do that? So like, to me, I wasn't expecting to dislike the ending as much as I did this time around for the 2007 one. Not that it was like terrible, but it was just like, I just really wish they would have stayed a little bit more true to the 57 way, because I felt like it left you with better questions, right? Like instead of escalating the events, the original one escalates the conscience and like the morality, and I would much rather deal with that than like explosions and action and kill shots.
Yeah, it was less a question and more so almost like a thank you, I guess, more of appreciation, right? Because it's
Hmm.
we see Ben. Obviously, a big difference, which I guess we should talk about directly, of course, is in this Dan dies. He
Right.
gets there and seems like all is good, and then Ben Foster's character like shoots Dan, and at first I'm like, oh, I guess he can make it. I'm like, oh no, then like shots keep coming, and oh no, he's dead. And then of course
Which is
like
a flip from the
yeah,
original one, because in the original one, Dan shoots Charlie Prince.
yeah, yeah. So it's and then of course then Ben makes that choice of then mowing down his entire gang, which again which I do also kind of question too, because it's like I don't know, like I understand killing Charlie, but like everyone they were kind of like but I guess again that's the character that he is, and then again he's just making the feeling in debt to him makes the choice to get on the train and then
Hmm.
go through. I don't like, but I will say I do like the journey of that, of a son seeing his father and getting that faith in
Yeah.
him and going through like that part I did enjoy, and it is different, and like you said, it's not a question um, of what morals mean. It's more of a question of appreciation, or not even a question, an act of appreciation in some ways. But of course, appreciation to a point where it's like, I'll do it, but like I'm gonna, maybe for a few moments, and then I'm getting out of here, getting on this
Yeah.
horse because I won't be on here for long. But yeah, but outside of that, talking about what's the same, that the endings are very just in how they're shot very similar. Like that when the moments they get in the hotel, the way they use the window, a lot of that
Right.
is like scene for scene mangled clearly. Just looking at the similarities, like very similar structure wise, like that scene's very similar. Like similar same way of like when they have the dinner scene at
Hmm.
Dan Evans' house, like a lot of the same
The
dialogue about
the interaction with Emmy and Ben in
yeah,
the saloon is almost identical.
yeah, saying grace, and like him. But although again, it's a little bit different because Ben has more of a knowledge of religion compared to
Right.
here
Right.
in the remake compared to the other one. So So they do plenty of homages within that. And like I said, the structure itself is very similar, and how it goes through,
Oh,
and Dan having the same type of problems, but going about it in the same way. Trying to get the money, although having that same conversation in the bar with Ben about getting paid for his day work, and this very similar dialogue again.
yeah.
And then, but I think what's different within the remake though is that I got the sense that Dan wasn't aware that like the people were going to arrest Ben. I think he was not part of that decision. He kind of just
Yeah.
got caught into it compared to the original where it was clearly the plan from the start. So
Well,
even
I
with
think
it, yeah, go ahead.
it adds something too about like the Dan character is very different in the two movies, right? Like
Mhm.
as much as he's the same and doing similar actions and things like that, like in the original one, it's always about his like he's an average guy, right? Like he might be a good shot or something like that, but like outside of that, like he's not built up as like this, brave person. It's like he's just an average person. He's an average guy. He's an average husband and father and like just worker and things like that. And like it seems like the whole movie is him struggling with courage, right? Struggling to find his courage and what that means and like
Mhm.
his moral conscience, right? Or his like his view of himself, like how he views himself, how he views him as far as being a successful husband or father and not, and like his worth, which is obviously called into question by both his kids and his wife in a way like are showing disappointment in different respects with him, and it's kind of like all of that struggle towards that. And I feel like from the go he sees that somebody did something wrong and he wants them to get justice, and so like there's a motivation there, and then it's so he has that part going for him, and then he has like the financial side going for him. So he's got like two different things that are drawing him into this, and it's like kind of his struggle with that throughout. Whereas in the new version, we completely rewrite that character to be a former, member of the army or whatever with the union or whatever, and then he's lost a leg, and so like it's a whole different situation. Like he's no longer this as much as he's an average man, he's also like this person that formerly fought in a war that like has a legit reason for questioning his worth because doesn't have a leg and he
Yeah.
can't do certain stuff, and you can tell that's weighing on him. So it's like a completely different dynamic where it's like less about it's more about him being a very like he's shown as someone who is capable, right? Like
Mhm.
he at one point was a very capable person, and now it's like his journey to rediscover that like capableness compared to like just an average person who's just trying to like get the courage to do what his mind says is the right thing versus like fading into the background. And so it's interesting. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying it's an interesting way to have like a different take on this same character. What was your kind of reaction to Dan Evans and kind of how he's played in both films?
I guess I'll disagree. 'Cause I guess in the sense of, I think that's more of a red herring in the sense of him being a soldier, because you think he is,
Hmm.
he isn't this regular guy, that he was a soldier. You're like, how did he lose a leg? Was it in battle? Was it, did it get blown off? And then you kind of find out it was basically by his own man.
Right.
He never fought in battle. Like he never, like he basically, he got shot by his own man. He went home, so he never actually got the opportunity to fight for the North. He was so in a way he's living not a facade per se,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
he's always trying to kind of make up for that, and he because of that he's never been able to be the person he thought he could be. It's almost like he feels like a part of him was taken away, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
So I thought that, to me, at first I was like, oh, they made him a soldier. Like I forgot about that piece. Like,
Hmm.
and then, but I thought in a way, I liked the way they approached that though, because like I said, I thought like actually no, he he's just as he's a soldier, but in really in name only, in the sense of he actually never
True.
got go through it. So I thought that dynamic at least was a good way of subverting expectations in some ways. So I didn't mind that change. I do think though. Um, I think the progression of Dan in the original, I feel like it makes more sense, and I do think
Hmm.
in the sense of it's more of a straight line. Like you can piece out just why he's doing the things he's doing,
Right.
and I feel like he makes the decision regarding why, like him taking charge, like him going through it. I don't like the fact that in the remake, that's decisions kind of taken away from him, and it's really just Russell Crowe making the decision to like go along with it. I
Yeah.
feel like that's less of a powerful choice in a way, because he gets, again, like he gets the drop taken out off on him, and once again, it's not him making the decision; it's him having to have someone come along and basically save the day. So I feel like it makes it less satisfying. And then again, at the end, he ends up like he I guess he's successful, but then he gets killed by the end. So
Right.
I don't know. Like I felt like his character arc and the way it progresses and where it leads to, it's great. The fact that his son gets to actually believe in him and feel that he actually, has a dad to like be respectful of, even though in a way it's kind of false, because Ben Wade was really, kind of doing it on his own.
Right.
But then it's also short lived because he gets killed.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
so it's like, yeah.
Another thing that is definitely noticeable is that the original one, you spend a lot more time in the hotel, right? And you do have the sequence where uh, Ben Wade is telling him like these five guys that have gathered up, like none of them are going to be around to actually walk me to the train, including Butterfield. Like even he's going to abandon you, and he kind of like has that prophetic sequence
Yeah.
where he's basically telling Dan like it's going to be just you, like just so you know that like it's going to be just you, and that's it. And like in the remake, we still get that, but we also, since we added all of these people to the group, Alan Tudyk's character and Fonda's character and Doug Arand, whatever that guy's name is, what's his name? Kevin Durant's character, like, and it felt like the only reason we added so many more people to this was so that we could have this big long journey instead and just kill them off one by one. Um, in a way to add like more tension or more action. I don't know how much I appreciated that aspect versus like I thought it was, I don't know, like it felt like they were just being added so they would have more reason to show violence and killing the guys one by one until it's just Dan at the end by himself. And I that was definitely a difference, and like even to the point where when we get to the hotel, instead of the other individuals just having like crisis of conscience or like a fear for their life and like abandoning on their own, we have this like really weird sequence where Ben Wade, or not Ben Wade, is it Ben Wade or Charlie Prince, whoever offers, I think Charlie Prince offers all the money to like anybody in the town, like
Mhm.
anybody that kills these guys. Like it's basically like a John Wick style. They put the bounty on these five individuals, and just anybody who kills them is going to get $200, which to me like ended up like you walk yourself into a corner then by making it to a point where you're really going to have to suspend your disbelief on how anybody gets out of this, because all of a
Mhm.
sudden there's just countless people coming out of the woodwork trying to kill these five people, where in the original it's a ghost town, right? Like
Mhm.
there's nobody around, it's just the folks that are trying to get him there, and then it's just the gang of Ben Wade's gang who's coming after him, and that alone is enough to scare him when it's like 8 against 5 or when it's whatever the case may be. And so it's definitely a different dynamic when they go to that. What was your kind of feeling as far as like number one, having the larger cast of characters trying to get Ben Wade to contention and getting killed off one by one, and then kind of like how they handle like the bounty on them? Like, did you prefer one over the other?
Yeah, I guess when those characters, I just didn't die. I didn't really feel much because, like, I like Alan Tudyk
Right.
as an actor. His character, like, I felt like his character. Once you have that joke about him being, a veterinarian, like that's as much as we get about him. Like, they're just kind
Yeah.
of there. We don't really learn anything else. There's no progression. There's nothing additional. And so I don't think there's you really, like you said, they're just kind of there as an opportunity for more action compared to, like, again, going to like Charlie Prince and seeing this guy kind of wake up. You see, he wakes up in the afternoon when everyone's gone. he's kind of a loser, and then him trying to like actually prove everyone wrong, and you think you actually like, oh man, he's actually going to do it, and then the tragedy of what occurs, that is far more impactful than anything that happens, I feel like, with any of the additional characters in the remake by far. So
And you also get that cool sequence where Ben Wade, like in the original one, tells Dan Evans, like, how did you know, like, it was contention? I was like, I didn't.
yeah,
We have we have it like already. It's like an unwritten rule. We all go to the nearest cities, eat one person each, and we're gonna figure out where you're gonna take whoever gets captured. Like
yeah,
you didn't stand a chance from the get go. Like all of your attempts to be slick and to like disguise where you were going was gonna be pointless because we had somebody at every town anyways. I thought that was like a cool moment. It was like a cool like, wow,
yeah.
this guy is kind of a mastermind, and it also goes back to like the whole way that they concocted like taking the coach to Dan Evans' house, doing the switcheroo, and like
Mhm.
that was all much better laid out and executed in the original one. Yes, it's very similar in both, like the actual action, but the way they set it up in the original one makes it seem like it's much more of a thing, right? Like we're all gonna go this way, we're gonna
Mhm.
send that over there, we're gonna do a switch, and I was like totally following with it. I'm like, okay, I get what you're doing. I'm here for it. I want to see if it's successful or not. And then in like the new one, it just seemed like it was, I don't know if rushed is the right word, but it was just like it all happened, but there was no setup for it. It was just kind of like we're going
Yeah.
there and doing this, and it was like, oh, I guess we're doing what we did. Like without seeing the original one, like we had the benefit of just having seen the original one, so we know what's happening.
Mhm.
But I feel like without that, it's not as clear like that there's this like strategy involved that's like
Yeah.
trying to outsmart Ben Wade and his gang and like make like there's a reason why we're going to Dan's house. There's a reason that only those people are going to contention. We're going to keep it a secret. Like I feel like it's not handled as well in the new one, but maybe that was just maybe just because of the recency of how soon I had watched the original.
Yeah, I don't remember it being an intro. I think probably that's part of it, and I think also that's why we get the scene of them following the stagecoach and then getting to it, like and falling for it, and then
Hmm.
getting, but then I don't think they thought that through, and like, okay, they fall for it, and then what happens? Oh, they
Right.
kill us. Everyone dies. That's not a good plan. That's not a good plan. So yeah, so I
And
think
the
that's
original
what.
one, like, made it a point to, like, try to make it seem like they were so like, the gang was gonna be so far away that they may not get here in time, right?
Yeah,
Like, they were playing with the time a lot more in the original one, like, I don't think they have time to get here,
yeah,
whereas they may have made a brief mention of that in the, newer one, but, like, it didn't seem like it was as important, like, the race between time as they're sitting in this. I really like that it was a ghost town in the first one, and that
yeah,
nobody was there compared to, like, this whole town of people. I
yeah.
don't know.
It definitely felt like you had time was far more limited, and because obviously with the remake we go through Indian country, we have
Mhm.
we have more going on. Like there's more in between the different from point A to point B to point
Yeah.
C point D. So with with the remake there was more time in between. I think that's why we so I guess that is kind of why we needed those additional scenes, because you needed to have scenes to explain why Ben Wade's gang was able to then kind of catch up and get
Right.
to them. So yeah, so I guess that is a legit point. But yeah, I didn't have an issue with. I do think it was executed better in the first one, and like because like you do get the little brief of like, okay, this is what we're doing, but I do think at the end of the day, it made sense because we actually get to see the repercussions of what happened at the end.
Right.
But it did also make them seem kind of stupid because it's like, do you not think of what would happen if they caught up with you? Like, you didn't think that one through, but
Was it the worst pair of handcuffs they ever put on somebody? As far as
they looked
like,
really uncomfortable. That's
but like they stopped him from doing nothing.
yeah,
Like there was never a point where Russell Crowe was restricted in any of his actions. Like, yes, he was trying to get him off at one point and things like that, but like there was so much of the film where this like very dangerous, ruthless leader of a gang of outlaws that is being transported was just free to do almost whatever he wanted to do in this whole situation. It was and even the time where he does get the crap beat out of him by I think McElroy punches him like 17 times, and like the next day he has no marks on his face whatsoever. He has like one scratch left. I'm like, really? Like,
he's got an iron chin, so
The weirdest thing for me was in watching this was at first I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a shot for shot remake, right? Like they are using exact same sequences outside of like you get the barn set on fire, which is
Yeah.
the first thing you see, which is obviously different from the original. But then all of a sudden it goes into this situation where like the camera angles are the same, the dialogue and the lines are the exact, like word for word, they're saying the same lines.
Mhm.
And it's weird. Like it was such a crazy feeling for me that a film that was literally using the same angles, the same shots, the same dialogue, the same lines and moments from the original somehow was also able to feel like such a different film to me. Like
Yeah.
it was
Well,
like a weird dichotomy of like all of this is exactly the same, and then all of this is so much different.
yeah.
And it
It-
was like
it-
trying to balance those two was really interesting. And I almost wonder like why if you're gonna change so much and you're gonna modernize it, why use word for word some of the same lines? Like
I
I'm not talking about just like a few really well written lines. I'm talking about every line of dialogue for certain sequences was exactly the same.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, like because they're both coming from the same source
Yeah.
material. Because so I don't know if that's also part of it too. So
I
I
wasn't
know.
saying it was wrong. I just was
I
like,
don't-
if you're gonna modernize it, and like
Yeah,
I get having a few like homages and like references, but it was weird when it's like a sequence where it's like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and like there is not a single word changed. Like I'm not saying it's bad. It's just something that struck me
yeah.
as like you're changing so much of the other stuff, but like you're keeping these lines like die hard. Like I get it, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, it didn't bother me per se. I get, in the sense of it, in the sense, I never felt like the dialogue never fit the scene that they were in per se. Like it never felt antiquated, like,
Right.
so even in the original, like the dialogue didn't, because sometimes we get some of the Westerns where it feels like the dialogue feels very of the time or,
Mhm.
where, but I think it all
I
kind
guess
of
it was just
fit.
so well written that they wanted to use it twice.
Yeah.
I kind of get that.
Well, I
I feel
mean,
like some modern critics though, had these not been 50 years apart, like would be having the same type of like reaction that they get to like Force Awakens and A New Hope, right? Like it's like, or maybe that's a bad example because Star Wars comes with a lot of other stuff, but like the shot for shot remakes versus like things that
yeah.
feel the same. Like I don't know, like I feel like sometimes critics are not very nice to those films,
Mhm.
but like this one generally got a pass for most of it. Like it's very well received. It's got 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, the remake, and like not much bad was said about it, really.
Yeah, I also think probably because like it was coming at a time where westerns aren't super popular, so like even like a
Sure.
western being a cash grab isn't. It's not like it made a lot of money. I think it's, if anything, they just saw it as an opportunity to do something western wise, and it's not like 310 to Yuma is. It's not like
No.
up there in the top echelon as well. Like you ask the average person name a western, I don't think
It
many
wasn't
will
like a
say
remake of
yeah.
Citizen Kane. It was
Yeah,
it wasn't Casablanca or
or
something.
or like the Searchers or
Yeah,
state,
yeah,
some of the other ones. So, um, and honestly, like if it wasn't for the remake, I don't think I would be aware of the original, which I think is one of the benefits of
yeah.
remakes. Sometimes is that it can shine a light, and if it wasn't, we may not be talking about the original if the remake never happened within the retrospective. So I
Yeah.
think there are some benefits there.
And I'm happy that it came out for what I'm not saying like it solely was responsible because there was a couple other westerns that were being worked on simultaneously, but like I am happy that it is part of a collection of films that kind of reintroduced westerns to, you know, the film world and like probably helped lead to some of the other westerns we get, over the last 10 to 15
Mhm.
years. Because there was a time like, especially when we were, back doing more modern reviews like on a regular basis, like where we were getting a pretty good. I know you used to do like the awards at the end of the year, and like some of them were genre related or different stuff like
Mhm.
that. There was a good stretch where there was like 3 or 4 or 5 years, I think that both you and I would have had like a pretty easy pick for like a best western of each of those years, and like I don't know if that like resurgence of those films happens without films like 310 to Yuma coming out.
Yeah, because like this comes out in 2007, like 2008, we get Appaloosa, which is not huge, but it's pretty good. There's Good, the Bad, the Weird, which is a Korean film, so I don't know if that counts. But we'll get into True Grit next week, which is a
Hmm.
few years later. And it usually takes a few years for the impact to happen. But when we get into 2010. We have True Grit meets Cut Off, Jonah Hex. But even though it's not a great movie, it was at least them putting money behind something. I do think we see more westerns in the 2010s, with True Grit, Django, and a few others, and we see it kind of coming back. It's still obviously not what it once was, but we definitely get more throughout the years. Like,
Well, then like 2015, we got Slow West.
yeah,
I remember that one, and then I want to say there was a couple years we got Hell or High Water in 2016.
The Revenant, and there's also the question of like those like Hateful Eight, of course, Bone Tomahawk, and we've gotten First Cow is which I still haven't seen, the Buster Scruggs, the Coen Brothers film within the 2010s as well, and then like the more modern westerns like The Rider, which is like, I don't know if you'd call it a western per se, but it's and
Bone
then
Tomahawk.
and then even like more recently like The Power of the Dog, which was like really highly regarded. So I'm not saying like this remake led to all that, but
No,
I don't think we're seeing them much more in consistent basis, because before 2007, not a huge amount, but and we'll get into some more recent ones even within our retrospective. But yeah, anything else you wanted to say regarding either the?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that if we were like picking one over the other, like that we felt a little bit like better about, I think we're both picking the 1957 original film as like the
Mhm.
one that we would feel the strongest about. I don't want that to take away from, like, I still think 2007 version is a decent film. I think you're right. Like it is one that you can recommend more to like a modern audience and feel pretty good about like having it work for a modern audience, whereas maybe the original one wouldn't. I think the original one is something you would more probably recommend to like cinephiles that
Yeah,
haven't seen it and things of that nature. So I think they both have they're both good movies. Like the modern one is not a bad movie. I just think it didn't do it any service for me to watch it directly after I watched the original one, because I was pretty taken by the original one and I didn't expect that. Like a lot of times when some of these remakes of like these when it's a lesser known film, like there's a reason for it, and you're like, well, they're just like doing it better. Like I
yeah,
like I had anticipated more of like a Django, right? Like
hmm
something that was like not great, but had enough there that someone could take it and like try to make a better version of it. And I was not expecting the original 310 to Yuma to work as much as it definitely did for
yeah.
me. It's going to be near the top of the ones we've seen so far.
Yeah, I guess to kind of put it in layman's terms, like 310 to Yuma is more like the summer blockbuster, where the original is more like the Oscar, even though it didn't get nominated for any Oscars, but like,
Right.
it's so yeah. So it's interesting, because I wonder what's going to happen next week, because we'll get into True Grit with which did, I know the original won an Oscar, because that's John Wayne's infamous role where I think he won his first and only Oscar. I could be wrong, but I also know that the remake did get nominated for Best Picture, which I think.
Right.
So I'm curious to see how well that holds up. But what's your experience with the films next week?
So I definitely have seen the 2010 version, just like with 310 to Yuma. I saw the modern one, but I have not seen the 1969 version. I haven't seen. I think I've seen True Grit, the 2010 version, twice, but has at least been a decade, if not more, since I've seen it. So I feel like it's going to be very similar to this one, where I get a first time watch of the original 1969 version, and then I'm going to go into the 2010 one, remembering that I liked it a lot when it came out, and seeing like how does this one play, watching them back to back, and will I have a different reaction than I did to 310 to Yuma. I'm definitely like intrigued about. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's been a while. I last time I saw it was probably 2011, where maybe after that I might have seen it in 2011 again, but the first time I saw it was during the Best Picture showcase for AMC, where they showed all the when they used to
Hmm.
do that, where they would show all the best pictures, and so that was part of that. So that was the first time I saw it, and I was a big fan of it when I watched it. So, and I watched it, I think, a couple times after that, like when it was on TV and stuff. I don't, but it's been so now maybe 15, 14 years since I've seen it, from beginning to end. And I don't think I've seen the original at all. So that'll be interesting.
It's interesting, the original John Wayne, Glenn Campbell, Robert Duvall, and Dennis Hopper in the original one, along with the voice of Piglet from Winnie the Pooh. So he's in there as
Nice.
well. So that's going to be interesting for sure. And the Coen Brothers one obviously has Jeff Bridges, Matt Damon, Josh Brolin, Barry Pepper, Haley Steinfeld. So I'm intrigued. I'm ready to go. I'm interested in anticipating watching both of these and looking forward to our conversation on this one as well. So Dan, how can people keep in touch with you or check out anything else you're doing on the interwebs?
You can check Comic Concierge on most social media platforms, or I am on Letterboxd as Movie Revolt. So.
All right, and you can search me out at Optimus Solo or Kevin1981 on Letterboxd. You can also search out the Cinema Geeks by searching Cinema Geeks or Cinema Geekcast out there, and you can check out the website that a lot of our stuff is hosted on as well by going to the Geekcast Radio Network or geekcastradio.com. So that does it for this episode. Tune in next time for another chance to listen to more of the Cinema Geeks.